Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Mount and Blade Bannerlord, specifically the Realm of Thrones mod, and we're doing another armor video. This one is going to be for the North. So, just like all of the other videos in this series so far, and if you haven't seen those, I invite you to check them out. They're all on the channel, or at least all the ones I've done so far. We're going to be taking a look at the armor that this mod adds in for a specific region, and today's is the North. So, the land of the Starks, the Boltons, the Manderleys, etc. And there is a tremendous amount of armor variety. In a previous video, the last one I believe, I said the Westerlands might have the most armor variety. Yeah, that was incorrect. In that video, I added the caveat, except for possibly the North, but I've now confirmed it. The North has way more. It's not even close. The North gets a lot of love in this mod, and that's good because I think the North has some of the coolest and most unique armor in the show. Mostly because it's such a large region with so many famous families, or at least in the story, families that get the most attention. So, we're going to be doing this like always. I'll take a look at the troop trees for the North, which will show you kind of an accurate description or view of what you're going to see for armor in this mod, and then I'll go through the full suits of armor to show you what is possible. And again, with those suits of armor, it will have to be stuff that belongs to the North. So if we're missing gloves for a thing or whatever, we can replace them with one from another faction or family in the North, but nowhere else on the map. So with all that in mind, let's just dive on in and start off with the troops. So starting us off with the basic troop tree, we have the Northern troop tree, which starts with the Northern Peasant. And I'm not going to go super in depth with all of these units, but I will show you each one so you can kind of get a look at them, and I might make comments here and there. So starting with the Northern Peasant, we all have all vanilla assets. The Northern Recruit, still all vanilla assets. I mean, it looks appropriate for a Northern unit in, you know, this storyline, but still not all that special until we get to tier 2, and then we'll just go down the left troop tree first, starting with the Northern Soldier, then the Northern Man-at-Arms. We'll follow the infantry down with the Northern Sergeant, and then we have two options, the Northern Colonel, which is a skirmisher type unit, and the Northern Pikeman, which is a heavy spear-wielding infantry unit. So all of those, especially tier 4 and 5, look pretty solid. Those are pretty cool looking troops, and they really encapsulate the aesthetics of the Game of Thrones TV show. On the other side of this troop tree, we have the Cavalry with the Northern Scout, which is a very basic cavalry unit, and the Northern Horseman, which the armor of the unit looks pretty dang good, but I don't love how it doesn't have a unique armor for the horses, because this is one of my least favorite horse armors. I think it just looks really shabby. But other than that, a solid enough cavalry unit. Our other side is the Woodsman side, and this will be we'll have another two-handed infantry troop tree, and then the archers. So the Northern Woodsman is fairly basic. Then we have the Northern Raider, the Northern Winter Warrior, which I like with the fur cloak. I really enjoyed that aesthetic, and the Northern Winter Champion, which is a fairly heavily armored unit, and one of my favorite units in the game because they use this big, heavy two-handed sword, but they also have a bunch of throwing axes, so they're a very versatile unit. On the other side, we have the Northern Bowman, the Northern Archer, and finally the Northern Ranger. And this one's another interesting one because it does have a bow and a single quiver of arrows, but we also have that large Highland shield and a sword, so they work relatively well as an infantry unit as well as an archer. And obviously the armor that they're wearing is very good and looks great for the Northern aesthetic. So that is the Northern basic troop tree. Then we have a mercenary troop tree with the Wild Hares. So we have the Wild Hare Footman, the Wild Hare Archer, and the Wild Hare Horseman. These ones are kind of like just a half step between a vanilla bandit type troop and the Northern troop tree in the game. Then we have the Umber troop tree, which I quite enjoy. It starts with the Umber Levy, which isn't anything special. The Umber Footman starts looking pretty cool, and then we've got a couple different ones. So we have the Umber Archer and the Umber Marksman, which are both decent looking, the Umber Scout for cavalry, and the Umber Horseman for heavy cavalry, or their variant of heavy cavalry. Then we have infantry with the Umber Man-at-Arms, the Umber House Guard, or if we go down their top tier one, the Umber Axeman, and the Umber Berserker. So very cool, and definitely fits with the aesthetic of the Umbers as, you know, that tone was set in the Game of Thrones show. I like them. They're very cool. They're a cross between sort of a Viking aesthetic and the Umbers of Game of Thrones. Then we have our Stark troop tree, which, you know, obviously belongs to the Starks of Winterfell. Starting with the Stark Levy, we've got three different options, so archers, cavalry, and infantry. So we'll start with the archers. We have the Stark Bowman, the Stark Longbowman, and the Stark Master Bowman, which is nicely heavily armored and has two quivers of arrows. Then going down our infantry, we have the Stark Footman, the Stark Soldier, and then we have two options, the Stark Pikeman, or we could go down their elite line to the Stark House Guard, and finally the Stark Sworn Sword, which is a fairly good heavy infantry unit. On the other side, we have cavalry with the Stark Horseman and the Stark Cavalry. So all around pretty dang good. I like the armor on the Stark cavalry better than the Northern cavalry, so that's something to be said for it. But that is our Stark troop tree. Next we have our Mormont troop tree. So we have the Mormont woodsman, and going down our archer side first, we have the Mormont trapper, the Mormont huntress, which is where we start seeing more of the in-mod assets being used. Then we have the Mormont mounted huntress, which is one of the few mounted archer, like dedicated mounted archer troops in the game, especially in Westeros. So a very unique troop to use against a lot of factions that don't have a mounted archer unit. On the other side, we have the Mormont veteran huntress, and finally the Mormont bow maiden, which is actually a really good unit. They're equipped with a two-handed axe, a bow, and 2 quivers of arrows, so they make a very good infantry, like shock infantry slash archer unit. Plus, I love the Mormont armor. I think it looks really good, and they have a full suit, so I love that unit. That's their elite unit. On the other side, we have the footmen, and then we have the Mormont man-at-arms, and finally the Mormont house guard for their heavy infantry. Then we have their Mormont scout for cavalry and the Mormont horsemen for their heavy cavalry. So a pretty solid troop tree, I would say. Once you get to tier 4 and below, or above, they're all, using mostly in-mod assets, and they aren't very vanilla, and they are very unique. So a solid troop tree. Next we have the Manderley troop tree, starting with the Manderley levy. We can go down the left side first, the Manderley footmen, then the Manderley man-at-arms, and the White Harbor Pike Knight. Other side we have archers with the Manderley Archer and the Manderley Veteran Archer. Then we have their elite troop line, which is cavalry. The Manderleys are one of the areas where you can get better cavalry in the north. So we have the White Harbor Squire, the White Harbor Knight, the White Harbor Elite Knight, and finally the White Harbor Knight Commander, which is one of the best cavalry units in the north. So very, very cool, and I love that they have a trident. So that's the Manderley troop tree. Next we have the Karstark troop tree, so this belongs to the Karstarks. So the Karstark Levy and the Karstark Brute. Well, I should even say the Karstark Levy is just the one that's not too special. Once you get to the Brute, it actually looks pretty cool. Then we have the Karstark Archer and the Karstark Elite Archer. Then for cavalry, the Karstark Outrider, and heavy cavalry, the Karstark Shock Cavalry. Then their elite line is their infantry with the Karstark Spearmen, the Karstark House Guard, and the Karstark Loyalist. So nothing super flashy or anything, but again, it matches the aesthetic from the show pretty well, and they are decently well-armored units. Next, we have the Serwins. Again, you may be noticing the North definitely gets a lot of love in this mod. So we have the Serwin Levy, the Serwin Soldier, Serwin Archer, Serwin Veteran Archer, the Serwin Scout, and the Serwin Horseman, then House Serwin Axeman, Serwin Veteran Axeman, and their elite unit, the Serwin Marauder. So that is their top tier. It's a two-handed axeman unit with 3 things of throwing axes. So versatile unit, I would say. Then finally, we have the Bolton troop tree, which is our last one for the North, or at least I'm pretty sure it is. With the Bolton Levy, which ain't too special, but the whole rest of them are pretty good. So we have the Bolton Archer, the Bolton Veteran Archer, and the Bolton Hunter. And then for our other troop side, we have the Footmen, which goes down into the Bolton Horsemen for cavalry, and the Bolton Cavalry for their heavy cavalry unit. Then we have for infantry, the Bolton Veteran, which for some reason, oh, there it is. I was gonna say the picture isn't showing up, but there we have the Veteran. Then we have the Dreadfort Pikemen, and if we go down the other side towards their elite unit, we have the Dreadfort Blackguard and the Bolton Flayer. So all fairly good, I would say, units. I think that the armor for the whole Bolton troop tree is pretty on point, and they have good options for infantry, cavalry, and archers. So very solid troop tree. And that is it for troops. So like I said, a lot of them. We have many different troop trees, so a lot of your major houses in the North have full troop trees dedicated to themselves, which is why the North has so much armor in this mod. So let's get to those suits of armor, and I'll show you some of the coolest ones. I think I picked out 14 of them, but that's out of like 30. So there are a lot of suits of armor in the North in this mod. So for our most basic one that I included in here just for a baseline, we have the Northern Militia armor, and this one would obviously be suitable for any type of levy troops or infantry, but still better than a lot of the militia type armor that you see in this mod. So this is made up of the Northern Militia helmet, the Northern Gorget, the Northern Militia armor, Northern gloves, and Northern Militia boots. So fairly strong suit of armor in the way that, starting right off at the base level, we have one that all matches together and is named appropriately. I guess the only questionable part is the Gorget, but, I gotta fill each slot if I can. And I think it all works together rather well. So as a basic infantry unit, this is a good representation there. Next up, we have the another basic one with the one centered around the Northern Gambit gambeson, essentially. I just wanted another variant of really basic armor, and I wanted an excuse to use the rusted northern helmet. And so this suit is made up of the rusted northern helmet, the northern gorget, the north gambeson, the northern gloves, and the bolton boots. So all fairly solid. Again, makes a pretty good example of a very, very basic troop. Maybe a base level archer or something like that, but overall looks okay. But now we're going to get into the cool stuff. So next we have the standard northern infantry unit, and this is made up of the northern helmet 2, the northern gorget, the northern armor 1, the northern gloves, and the stark boots. So this is just a plain brown northern infantry armor. So like I said, looks pretty good, but this is still on the basic end of what they have to offer. Next we have the stark infantry armor. It's very similar, but some small differences. So you can see this one's made up of the stark helmet 2, the northern shoulders, stark armor 2, northern gloves, and stark boots 2. So once again, we've got that lighter brown aesthetic this time, and a little bit heavier armor, so the shoulders are more well protected, and the helmet is a little bit different, but a similar style versionette. So that is our stark armor 2. Next we have our bolton light armor, or our bolton archer armor, so just a suit of decent bolton type stuff for rank and file units. This is the bolton archer's helmet, the northern gorget, the bolton mail, the northern gloves, and the bolton leather boots. So not a full suit all named to go together, but I think it all looks pretty good together and offers what I would consider pretty decent protection for an average soldier. So that is our bolton light armor. Next we have the bolton heavy infantry armor. So this one is made up of the bolton helmet with cheek guards, bolton knight pauldrons, bolton plate, bolton knight bracers with gloves, and the bolton knight greaves. So a lot of knight stuff on here, but just equipping it with the bolton plate gives it that infantry aesthetic, and I think looks really good. So stands out really well aesthetically speaking. You can see we've got our the bolton sigil right on the chest. That looks pretty cool, and overall a fairly solid suit of armor. I genuinely enjoy this one. Not a lot of complaints, even though stylistically it's not as cool, I would say, as a lot of the northern stuff. It does fit very well and looks like a very good suit of armor. So that is our bolton heavy infantry armor. Next, we've got another one of my favorites, the Bannerlord armor. So this one just looks really cool in my opinion. Very understated, but obviously still a very solid suit of armor, stat-wise and appearance-wise. So this one is made up of the Umber helmet, the Bannerlord cloak, the Bannerlord armor, the Umber gloves, and the Umber boots. Overall, love the aesthetic of this one. Like I've said when we were looking at the troops, it's like a fusion of the Viking and the Game of Thrones northern aesthetic. It looks like it would be warm as well as offering decent protection, and I love the chains crossing the torso. That's always been an aesthetic choice that I loved from the show. It looks really cool to me, and it obviously goes with their house. So a cool suit of armor, and definitely something that I enjoy wearing in the mod, but that's the Bannerlord armor. Next we have the bolton knight armor, or the red bolton knight armor, because there's two variants here. Maybe you could call this one the bolton lord armor, because I think the only person you see wearing this armor is Roose Bolton in the mod, and it's, I assume, supposed to look like a flayed person because of, you know, the red for the blood and everything. So it's supposed to look like you're wearing the flayed skin of your enemy, I assume. Overall, aesthetically speaking, it's a very cool suit of knight armor. I really love the armor design of this. The red is a little off-putting for me, but I guess if you really want to be a red knight, it'd be cool for a tourney knight, I guess. But whatever the case is, this one is made up of the bolton knight helmet, the bolton knight pauldrons with cloak, the bolton knight armor, bolton gauntlets, and bolton plate boots, all red. So it all obviously matches really cool together, and I always appreciate when you have a full suit of armor, colored, designed, and named to go together. So it's very cool for all of those reasons. But that is the bolton lord's armor. Next up we have the bolton knight, which I would say is similar, except for in the chest armor and the helmet, to their infantry unit, but also looks very cool for the same reasons, it being unique and aesthetically fitting the whole vibe of the mod. This one is made up of the bolton knight helmet, bolton knight pauldrons, bolton knight armor, bolton knight bracers with gloves, and the bolton knight greaves. So once again, just like the last suit we looked at, I love where we get a full suit of all 5 items being named and, you know, themed appropriately to go together, so we have an actual full suit of armor without having to substitute anything else. Only weak part design-wise on this is the fact that we don't have any sort of a gorget or bevor when we have this high helmet where it doesn't protect any of the lower face and neck. It's always good to get some protection there. The only other advantage, or advantage I should say, of this helmet is the fact that it does give you an awful lot of mobility. But cool suit of armor in my opinion. I think this one looks pretty dope, and that's the bolton knight armor. Next we have the northern knight armor. So this is the like generic northern knight troop, and I think this one looks pretty good from a armor perspective. You obviously see a lot of points where we don't have plate covering, but that just offers great mobility for a cavalry unit like this. But the vast majority is covered by solid steel plate. So this one's made up of the northern heavy helmet, the Stark Knight Bevor, the Northern Knight armor, the Stark Knight gauntlets, and the Stark Knight greaves. So not all named appropriately, but obviously designed to go together, and it all looks pretty freaking solid. This is a cool looking suit of armor. So that is our Northern Knight armor. Then we have our Stark Knight armor, which is the same sort of thing, but just a couple small improvements. So this one is made up of the Stark Knight helmet with plume, Stark Knight Bevor, the Stark Knight armor with mail, the Stark Knight gauntlets, and the Stark Knight greaves. So you can see, like the last one, we have all those gaps. This time we have mail underneath them, which would make it heavier, but obviously still give you lots of mobility. This time we have the Stark sigil right there on the chest, but with the direwolf on it, and it just all goes together to make a very well protected looking knight. I definitely love this one. I'm glad when this was a couple updates ago, but when this got added into the mod, it's something you don't see in the shows, or at least I've never seen in the shows, but it would make sense for some wealthy person from the north, especially if they had been knighted, which was rarer in the north but did happen, to pursue a full suit of comprehensive plate armor in the Andal style that you see elsewhere in the world. So I love that. It looks awesome, and I love how heavy and comprehensive it is. Next, moving on to one that I think looks alright, but I definitely don't love it as much as the last couple we've looked at, and that's the Karstark Lord armor. So this one's made up of the Karstark coif, the Karstark gorget, the Karstark Lord armor, the Northern gloves, and the Karstark boots. So we don't have any Karstark specific gloves, but the Northern gloves obviously look perfectly fine with the suit of armor. I like the color, the green looks cool, but other than that, this is, for a Lord's armor, fairly basic. And again, I know that they're basing it off the armor worn by, I believe it was Rickard Karstark, or something like that in the show, but that was obviously not a very high budget attempt at a suit of armor, so, you know, this reflects that. But it looks good enough. Next, we have the Manderley Knight armor, and this one was relatively well represented by the troop tree, but still, I wanted to take a look at it. So this one's made up of the House Manderley helmet, the Manderley pauldrons, House Manderley armor, the Manderley or House Manderley bracers, and the Bolton Knight greaves. So you could use any of the Knight greaves from the north, but the Manderleys don't have their own, so Stark Knight greaves, Bolton Knight greaves, whatever you use, I think they match relatively well with the outfit. So I think the Manderleys have a cool, unique suit of armor. I like that between their plate armor for the shoulders and the wrists, we have this scale underneath. I think that fits in well with their whole mermaid vibe. So I definitely like this one. I think it looks pretty cool and very unique. Next, we have the House Hughes armor, and this is like the darker black variant of a heavy Stark infantry unit. And I think it looks really cool. It definitely fits the Northern aesthetic really well and looks just heavy duty and beefy. So this one's made up of the Northern heavy helmet, the Northern pauldrons, the House Hughes armor, the House Hughes vambraces, and the Stark boots 1. So all of this comes together, in my opinion, to make a very quintessential Game of Thrones style armor. I really enjoy it a lot. I don't have any major complaints. I like that I guess there's a little bit of clipping between the House Hughes vambraces and the Northern pauldrons right here at the elbow. But other than that, it does look pretty freaking good. I love it. I love it a lot. It's a perfect example of Northern armor from Game of Thrones. So that's the House Hughes armor. We have one suit left to look at. And here at the last one, we have one that is just, it's always been one of my favorites in this mod. And it's not as comprehensive as many or flashy as many, but it still just looks so cool and unique, and it's the Mormont armor. So this one's made up of the Mormont Lord helmet, the Mormont pauldrons, Mormont armor, Mormont bracers, and Mormont boots. I just love the aesthetic of this one. It's got some cool texturing all over the armor, so it doesn't look bland or stock. It does look a lot like Jorah's armor from the early seasons of Game of Thrones, except for, you know, more comprehensive than that, and the helmet appears to be unique, but matches it really, really well. So like I said, it's possible that I left my favorite for the end, but it's hard for me to say that for sure with the Northern armor in this mod, because I love a lot of it. It's so cool, unique, and fits each house individually. And I love the feudalistic style that we have there. It's not all uniform. The Westerlands have a lot of cool armor, but most of it looks really similar. Whereas with the North, each house has super distinct and unique armor that some of it kind of looks similar to other parts, but most of it just looks entirely different, night and day. So yeah, that is the House Mormont armor, and that is it for the outfits that I wanted to show you for all of the Northern armor in this mod. And that's it for the mod. So I hope you enjoyed this video about the armor of the North in Realm of Thrones. Like I said, I've made lots of videos in this series already covering a bunch of the other factions. But with all that being said, thanks a ton for watching and have a nice day. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.